In early 180 BC, the palace of the king of Qi was surrounded by heavy troops. Yet the soldiers laying siege to the king were his own, the army of Qi. Leading them was the Chancellor of Qi. Shortly before, Liu Xiang, the king of Qi, had prepared to raise an army to revolt against the Lü clan, who then controlled the imperial court. However, the Chancellor adamantly refused, arguing that since the Lü clan had committed no public crimes and the emperor had issued no edict for their suppression, any military action would be nothing short of high treason. Liu Xiang planned to eliminate the obstructionist chancellor, but the plot leaked. The chancellor, who held the actual power in the realm, deployed troops to surround the royal palace. However, Liu Xiang was the eldest grandson of Liu Bang, the founding emperor Gaozu. The chancellor dared only to blockade the palace, not to launch an assault. As the two sides remained in a deadlock, the commandant of Qi arrived, claiming he wished to assist the chancellor. Trusting him, the chancellor handed over command of the siege. Instead, the commandant turned the army to surround the chancellor's own residence, forcing the chancellor to commit suicide. Regaining his freedom, Liu Xiang rewarded his supporters, opened the royal treasury to recruit more soldiers, and raised the banner of armed resistance against the Lü clan. 1. Liu Xiang, the king of Qi. Liu Xiang's father was Liu Fei, the illegitimate eldest son of Liu Bang. When Liu Bang enfeoffed his kinsman, he carved out a vast territory of 73 counties for his eldest son, making Qi, along with Chu, the most powerful princely realms. This made Liu Fei a thorn in the side of the Lü family. They suppressed him repeatedly, even attempting to poison him at one point. To survive, Liu Fei ceded large portions of his territory multiple times, allowing the court to establish the states of Lu, Langya, and Lu within the original borders of Qi, significantly weakening its power. Liu Fei eventually died in a state of constant fear and anxiety, leaving behind 3 sons. The eldest, Liu Xiang, inherited the title of King of Qi, while his brothers Liu Zhang and Liu Xingzhu were made marquises and summoned to the capital, Chang'an, to serve as political hostages. Following the death of Empress Dowager Lü, the 3 brothers conspired repeatedly and finally became the first to raise the flag of rebellion against the Lü clan. While Qi was powerful, its strength had waned after being repeatedly partitioned. More critically, Liu Xiang was not the eldest grandson of the legal line. Not only was the reigning emperor technically the legitimate grandson of Liu Bang, but among the other vassal kings, there were those who far surpassed Liu Xiang in seniority and age. Liu Ze, the king of Langya, was one such man. 2. Liu Ze, the king of Langya. Theoretically, Liu Ze had almost no chance of becoming emperor. He was a cousin of Liu Bang, yet also a son-in-law of the Lü family, having married the daughter of Fan Kuai and Lu Shu. In his youth, he joined the military as an imperial attendant, Lang Zhong, and distinguished himself in the various wars to suppress rebellions after the founding of the Han Dynasty. He was eventually enfeoffed as a marquis and promoted to the rank of Grand General, commanding the Northern Army, the elite force responsible for the defense of Chang'an. After Liu Bang's death, as the Lü faction began to suppress the Liu clansmen, Liu Ze became deeply uneasy while holding command of the Northern Army. He sent a strategist to persuade Empress Lü that he was willing to surrender his military power in exchange for being made a vassal king. Delighted, the Empress carved out a large tract of land from Qi to create the Kingdom of Langya and appointed Liu Ze as its king. Liu Ze immediately handed over the Northern Army and left the treacherous capital of Chang'an. By the time the Empress regretted letting go of one of the few military talents of the Liu lineage, Liu Ze had already reached his fiefdom. When Liu Xiang raised his army, he sent an envoy to invite Liu Ze, his great-uncle, to join the cause, humbly claiming he lacked military talent and hoped Liu Ze would lead the Grand Army. Liu Ze arrived in Qi, only to be detained on Liu Xiang's orders. The army of Langya was promptly seized by Qi. The formidable king of Langya found himself a prisoner in the palace of Qi. 3. Liu Zhao, the king of Chu. While Liu Ze was only a cousin, Liu Zhao, the king of Chu, was Liu Bang's younger brother. He was the most senior and prestigious member of the surviving Liu royalty. Although Liu Zhao was elderly and frail at the time, his son, Liu Yingke, served as the minister of the imperial clan, Zongjeng, in Chang'an, the ultimate arbiter of bloodline and legal legitimacy. Most importantly, Chu was the second largest vassal state, and its power was not to be underestimated. After Liu Xiang began his open defiance, Chu likely initiated its own military mobilizations. While official records are vague on Chu's movements, they explicitly record the Lü clan's reaction. They feared the armies of Qi and Chu. Facing resistance from the two most powerful kings, the Lü faction handed their forces to a fellow townsman, General Guan Ying. They hoped this veteran general, who had fought his way up from the bottom alongside Liu Bang, could defeat the armies of Qi and Chu. Guan Ying led an army of 200,000 out of the Hangu Pass to the strategic stronghold of Xingyang, facing off against the Qi forces. Before the first blow was struck, a flurry of messengers converged on Guan Ying's tent. The most critical were secret envoys from Chancellor Chen Ping and Grand Commandant Zhou. From that moment on, Guan Ying held his position and refused to move, while advising the Qi army not to advance. Knowing he was no match for Guan Ying, and having received a promise that Guan Ying would oppose the Lü clan, Liu Xiang withdrew his troops and returned to Qi. 4. Liu Sui, the king of Zhou. While the stalemate held on the front lines, a tectonic coup erupted in Chang'an. Within a single day, Chen Ping and Zhou seized control of the northern army and the political apparatus. The king of Lu, Lu Chan, and the king of Zhou, Lu Lu, were executed. Discussion turned to the vacant thrones. The ministers decided to restore the title of the king of Lu to its original name, the king of Liang, and gave it to the emperor's youngest brother. The title of king of Zhou was given to Liu Sui. Liu Sui was the son of Liu Yu, the youngest son of Liu Bang, and the second king of Zhou to be murdered by Empress Lü. His appointment represented the total dismantling of the Lü political ecosystem by the Meritocracy Faction led by Chen Ping and Zhou, signaling the start of a thorough purge. Although Liu Sui was of the purest imperial bloodline, the state of Zhou lacked the raw power of Qi or Chu. Furthermore, he was a prince with no political foundation. Even his father had been buried with the rights of a commoner after offending the Lü clan. Because of this, the Zhou lineage played no significant role in the political entanglements following the coup. However, it is noteworthy that in earlier political communications, the position of king of Zhou had been reserved for Liu Zhang, the Marquis of Zhou, who had performed great feats in the destruction of the Lü clan. The position of king of Liang was intended for the youngest of the three Qi brothers, Liu Xingju, the Marquis of Dongmu. Both men had indeed contributed immensely to the coup. How to make them accept this reality and appease their ambitions became a problem the ministers had to handle with extreme delicacy.
5. Liu Heng, the emperor.
At this moment, Liu Zhang, the Marquis of Zhou, and Liu Xingju, the Marquis of Dongmu, were still unaware of the Kingmakers' ultimate design. It was then that Liu Ze, the king of Langya, who had been held under house arrest, persuaded the king of Qi to release him. Under the pretense of lobbying for the king of Qi's ascension to the throne, Liu Ze traveled to Chang'an. Upon his arrival, he immediately entered into urgent consultations with the high officials and nobles who had orchestrated the coup. A dire question was now looming. The Lü clan had been suppressed, but what about the emperor? The reigning emperor, Liu Heng, was 16 years old, the fourth son of the late Emperor Hui. Although he was undeniably the grandson of the founder, Liu Bang, the blood of the Lü clan still flowed through his veins. The ministers were consumed by dread. They feared that if these descendants of the Lü lineage were allowed to survive, who could say what vengeance they might exact once they came of age? Under this crushing political reality, a consensus was swiftly reached. The current emperor must be deposed. The legal justification was provided by Liu Yingke, the minister of the imperial clan, who held the sole authority over imperial lineage. They simply declared that all of Emperor Hui's sons, including the reigning emperor, were of spurious bloodline, fabricated by the Lü clan. In their eyes, these children were not the true descendants of Emperor Hui at all. This convenient logic also resolved the issue of the Qi brothers, Liu Zhang and Liu Xingju. If the late emperor's sons were all frauds, the kingdom of Liang would naturally become vacant. Coupled with the execution of the king of Yan, also of the Lü clan, 2 more thrones were now available to appease the ambitious brothers. It was a perfect political compromise. But then the ultimate question surfaced: who would be the next emperor? On the surface, 2 of the 3 Qi brothers were present in the capital, and Liu Ze had seemingly arrived to champion their cause. However, the first to voice opposition to the king of Qi was Liu Ze himself. His argument struck a lethal chord. The king of Qi's maternal family is no better than the Lü clan. His uncle is a man of legendary cruelty. To crown the king of Qi is to invite a second era of consort tyrants. Strangely, Liu Xiang's 2 brothers remained silent. The only logical inference is that they believed betraying their elder brother would yield greater personal rewards than supporting him. With the most powerful candidate, the king of Qi, disqualified, who remained to take the throne. 6. Liu Heng, the king of Dai. Amidst these tense calculations, a vassal king emerged from the shadows, a man so low profile he had been all but forgotten. Liu Heng, the king of Dai. As the 4th son of Liu Bang, Liu Heng was 24 years old. His mother was Lady Bo, formerly a concubine of the insurgent king of Wei. After her capture by General Han Xin, she was sent to the Han Palace. Following a single chance encounter with Liu Bang, she gave birth to Liu Heng. However, she never won the emperor's favor. This lack of affection proved to be her salvation, as it spared her from the lethal jealousy of Empress Lü, making her one of the few lucky concubines allowed to leave the capital and live with her son in his fiefdom. Years earlier, after Empress Lü had caused the deaths of 3 successive kings of Zhou, she summoned Liu Heng to take the vacant throne. Liu Heng, however, declined the honor under the guise of guarding the frontier, thereby escaping the doom of being controlled by the Lü clan in the capital. In the eyes of the Kingmakers, Liu Heng possessed 2 unparalleled virtues. First, a weak maternal background. As a former captive, Lady Bo had no influential clan behind her. Her only brother, Bo Zhao, was a mere minor official handling administrative chores in the borderlands. Second, Liu Heng was reputed to be benevolent and filial. Or, in political terms, he appeared far less ambitious and much more malleable than the king of Qi. While these pragmatic reasons could not be voiced in open court, the ministers produced an impeccable, unassailable justification. Liu Heng was the eldest surviving son of the founding emperor, Liu Bang. By 180 BC, only 2 of Liu Bang's 8 sons remained. Aside from the 24-year-old Liu Heng, there was the 18-year-old 7th son, Liu Chang, the king of Huainan. Even setting aside the tradition of primogeniture, Liu Chang had been raised in the capital by Empress Lü herself. This single fact doomed his candidacy. Thus, after a series of high-stakes political maneuvers and compromises, the path was set. On a summer dawn, as the first light broke over the capital, a fleet of envoys galloped from the gates of Chang'an to every corner of the realm to complete the reconstruction of the empire. The Marquis Liu Zhang personally rode east to Qi to inform his brother of the Lü clan's annihilation and to order the disbandment of his army. He also bore the delicate task of soothing Liu Xiang's disappointment with a generous consolation. The court agreed to dissolve the states of Lü, Lu, and Langya, returning all occupied territories to the kingdom of Qi. The minister of the imperial clan, Liu Yingke, hurried southeast to his dying father, the king of Chu, with the final verdict and a piece of joyous news. Because the heir of Chu had passed away early and Liu Yingke had performed great service to the state, the new emperor would appoint Liu Yingke as the new crown prince of Chu. Other messengers raced to every vassal state and key commandery to announce the monumental changes within the central government. But the most important mission of all headed north. They did not travel with grand fanfare, but moved in secrecy toward the frontier to summon the king of Dai to the capital. The question remained, would the king of Dai dare to come? 6. Zhang Yan, the king of Lu. The king of Dai, Liu Heng, faced this unexpected summons with an astonishing display of stoicism. After a meticulous deliberation with his closest advisors, he dispatched his uncle, Bo Zhao, to Chang'an to negotiate with Zhou Bo. Following a period of clandestine bargaining behind closed doors, Bo Zhao returned to report the terms. Only then did the cautious Liu Heng enter the capital and take up residence in the temporary mansion of the King of Dai. Within the confines of the mansion, the gathered ministers presented the Great Seal of the Son of Heaven to Liu Heng. Following the ritualized 3 refusals, a traditional display of humility, Liu Heng finally accepted the ultimate symbol of imperial power. The list of officials who signed this earnest petition is remarkably revealing. It included Chancellor Chen Ping, Grand Commandant Zhou Bo, Grand General Chen Wu, Imperial Councillor Zhang Chang, Minister of the Imperial Clan Liu Yingke, Marquis Liu Zhang, Marquis Liu Xingzhu, and Minister of State Guests Liu Ji. Their justification was framed in grand, moralistic terms. Liu Heng and the others are not the true sons of Emperor Hui and are unfit to serve the imperial ancestral temple. We have respectfully consulted with the Marquis of Yin'an, the consort of King Qing, the 2 sisters-in-law of Liu Bang, the King of Langya, the imperial clansmen, the high ministers, the marquises, and all high-ranking officials. The consensus is unanimous. The King of Dai is the eldest surviving son of the founding Emperor Gaozu and is the rightful successor. We pray that the great king ascends the throne. Thus, the ascension of Liu Heng was a consensus reached by every pillar of power: the executive branch, the military, the imperial clan, and the venerated elders of the founding generation. It was perfectly legitimate, entirely inevitable. Yet everyone involved chose to ignore one haunting question. Were Liu Heng and his brothers truly not the sons of Emperor Hui? Immediately after Liu Heng accepted the throne, Liu Xingzhu approached the Grand Coachman, Xiahou Ying. He said, "We didn't have much of a chance to act during the coup. Now we must take the initiative to clear the palace for the new emperor." Together they entered the Forbidden City and demanded that the boy emperor, Liu Heng, vacate the premises. The 16-year-old emperor looked at Xiahou Ying bewildered and asked, "Where are you taking me?" Xiahou Ying was a fellow townsman of the founder, Liu Bang, and had served as his personal charioteer throughout the Wars of Unification. Years earlier, during the desperate retreat from the Battle of Pengcheng, Liu Bang had repeatedly kicked his own children, including Liu Hong's father, out of the chariot to lighten the load. Each time, it was Xiahou Ying who stopped the carriage to pick the children back up. In a sense, without Xiahou Ying, Liu Heng would never have existed. Facing the confusion of this boy, who was effectively his grandson's peer, Xiahou Ying replied chillingly, "Somewhere else to stay." Liu Xingzhu and Xiahou Ying then disarmed the imperial guards and escorted the emperor out of the palace in the imperial carriage. Then, driving that same carriage, Xiahou Ying returned to the mansion of the King of Dai to welcome Liu Heng into the palace. That very night, all 4 sons of Emperor Hui, the deposed Emperor Liu Hong, and the kings of Liang, Huaiyang, and Changshan, were executed. If one includes the earlier execution of the sons of Fan Kuai and Lu Shu, the only descendants with Lu blood to survive the Purge were Zhang Yan, the king of Lu, and his 2 brothers. Who was Zhang Yan? He was the grandson of Empress Lü, the son of Princess Lu Yuan and Zhang Ao. Technically, he was both the uncle and the cousin of the doomed Emperor Liu Hong. In the Great Purge, though his kingdom was dissolved, his life was spared. This was not due to mercy, but simply because his father had died years earlier, and the Zhang family no longer possessed the political capital to pose a threat to the new status quo. This was the cold logic of the Kingmakers. Having lived for 15 years under the high-pressure shadow of the Lü clan, they now sought only a benevolent and gentle ruler, one who would preside over a political landscape they could finally control. The question remains, was Liu Heng, the King of Dai, truly the malleable ruler they expected? Within the vast archives of Chinese history, there lies a hauntingly enigmatic detail. Long before his ascension, Liu Heng had a queen consort who bore him 4 sons. Yet, in the brief window before he departed for Chang'an to claim the throne, both the queen and all 4 of her sons reportedly perished from illness. History, so meticulous in recording the lineages of emperors, remains chillingly silent regarding their names. However, the records are explicit about another fact. During the height of Empress Lü's tyranny, it was a systemic policy to coerce the kings of the Liu lineage into marrying women of the Lü clan. At least 7 such forced marriages are clearly documented. Hypothetically, and let us emphasize this is a heavy if, what if the Queen of Dai was also a Lü? What if her sudden disappearance, and that of her 4 sons, was not a tragedy of medicine, but a calculated clause in the clandestine pact between Bo Zhao and Zhou Bo?